Hi everyone, I'm Aisha. I'm one of the directors at Clearwatch Security. We're an SME, a small to medium enterprise based in Oldham. We've been around for around 13 years now. When I first started working at Clearwatch, I was totally new to security, and quite early on I learnt that it's an industry which is quite dominated by men. Not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing, but it just takes some adjustment depending on the kind of background that you've come from. It was a long time coming, but the scope of this podcast that we've decided to start now is to kind of discuss what we see in our daily roles as women in the security industry, and kind of discuss frontline roles and the challenges we face when recruiting women in security. And I've got a bit of an expert on that, who's our HR manager. She doesn't think she's an expert, but I would say she's definitely an expert on this. Her name's Rebecca Marshall. She joined us about 2 years ago now, and she comes from a retail background. So I'm just going to pass over to her to give a bit of an introduction about her. So Rebecca, pot noodle time. So this is just an inside joke we have. We like pot noodle. Pot noodle time for us is how we bash things out, how we have discussions. We get a pot noodle and we talk over a pot noodle, and we find that it's quite cleansing for the soul, isn't it? No, maybe not for the stomach, but definitely for the soul. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I have to agree. So hi everyone, I'm Becky. And I'm the HR manager at Clearwatch Security, and I have been in this role now for approximately, coming up to 2 years now, I think. And my background is predominantly retail, which is, I'd say it was a female-dominated industry. So moving over to an industry which is male-dominated has brought some new challenges.
Right, so that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about some of those challenges. So why don't we start off specifically with recruitment and how you find it different, I suppose, to where you've come from, where it's a female-dominated environment to a more male-dominated one.
Okay, so obviously we've been through the pandemic, and recruitment as a whole at the moment is tough across every sector, particularly in security. It's even harder at the moment to recruit women into our industry. I think the current statistic is 9% of officers who are qualified are women. I think that's actually dropped from the previous year, which was 11%. So the challenges that we face are how do we get that 9% of women into our business, into our industry, and how do we increase that number? I think the roles that we've recruited for recently, we've had 1, maybe 2 women who've been shortlisted. So it's tough.
I think what we can focus on a little bit is all the different roles that are there on the front line, but aren't really discussed. So I think the old way of looking at security is kind of door supervisors, bouncers, the old speak, and unfortunately it doesn't come with a good background to it. So I think maybe it's seen as something quite negative. I don't think people realise all the different roles that you can do. I mean, as a company, we don't have any traditional bouncers anyway. We don't do that kind of work.
I think that's it. I think it's the perception that the industry has. And the reasons that women might be held back from seeking to obtain their SAA licence. It is a male-dominated industry. I think there's fears that sexism is still prevalent in the sector. Fears that gender will impede career progression for women. But I think the main reason I feel is that there's the perception that security work isn't safe for women.
Yeah, that is a fair point to make. But when it is largely male dominated, it's hard, because if you do recruit a woman into an all male team, it would be difficult to make her feel comfortable in that environment. It could be the case where she might work for a few days and then feel like she doesn't want to do it anymore. because there's no other female support for her. I think it's important to talk about how companies and how the SIA as a whole can help those kind of perceptions, and start a narrative on that.
Absolutely, because I think obviously we've seen in the news lately that women's safety is at the forefront of a lot of people's minds. It's quite, a hot topic in female communities. And I think having female officers that, they're actually seen as less intimidating than male officers. So there is an important role for women to play in security.
I do feel that. I feel like they can bring a lot more in terms of their nature and the way that women perceive things. I think they can bring a lot more to the environment that they work in different ways. There's so many different roles that a woman can do, especially, within our company, within any security company, there's retail security, there's CCTV operatives, there's corporate security, there's event security. And when you get your SIA badge, there's so much upskilling that you can do. You can now as part of the badge, you have to have the first aid at work course as well. So there's so many new skills that you can learn. And I feel like, again, the perception of a woman, or the way maybe a woman sees things, is slightly different. Just like I feel like when you first joined the security industry, when you joined our company, and myself as well, I've come from a completely different background. And I think that's whether you're male or female. When you're from a different background, you bring your own set of thoughts and your own set of ideas and ways to deal with things. In the same way, I feel like if more women came to the industry, especially on the front line, they'd bring a completely different set of skills with them.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, in certain roles within security, women have that competitive edge, particularly when safeguarding vulnerable women and children. Quite often a female is the best placed officer in that environment rather than a male. One of the things that struck me was, I think maybe this is my retail background coming through here, was a work-life balance for women, who, especially women who are juggling children, childcare. Retail can be quite restrictive in that respect. There isn't always the flexibility which women might need. Whereas security, there is a massive scope for flexibility. I know that's something that we offer all of our officers. There's quite often the flexibility to sort of pick and choose when they work their shifts. Yeah. So for me, that would be something that would really attract women into this industry and our organisation.
So do you think, what about the misconception around unsociable hours though? Look, I think that's quite a big one, and I think that's quite a big challenge that we have, to try and put across that it's not all unsociable hours. Yes, some of it is night work, or maybe a lot of it can be night work, but it's not necessarily the be all and end all of it. And some women, or men, I suppose, when you've got a young family and say you've got a partner, it's about balance, isn't it? Yeah. Whatever career path you choose, and sometimes you can balance it if you are the kind of person that finds it easy to stay up at night and would like to work nights. This is for you. But even if you don't, I do feel like there's other roles within security that you could do, which would mean you'd still work about 24 hours a week, but because of the long shift, you'd probably only have to do 2 days. Yeah. So arranging childcare and juggling with your partner maybe wouldn't be as difficult as it might be in other settings.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, we do have a lot of people in our organisation who are parents who've said that this suits them. It suits their childcare and their work-life balance. So it's interesting that we aren't attracting more women.
I do feel like, again, it might be that misconception about maybe what in inverted commas, what a security officer should look like. Again, going back to the traditional, big bodybuilder type of look, maybe But maybe I think also that women feel that men are probably better at diffusing situations. You know, if something kicks off, it's easier for a man to deal with. But I've come across a lot of women in the industry who seem to think that it's probably actually easier for women to diffuse a situation when it gets heated.
I think that's true. I think women by nature have a calming way about them to diffuse situations, especially if they're becoming heated or hostile. Women will are sort of quicker, I suppose, to think on their feet and use their initiative to resolve the problem and calm people down.
Yeah, I think when we discuss things like, especially now, I think insecurity. I mean, I've been in the industry for 13 years now, and I think more and more over the years, what I've heard and what we've talked about a lot is the customer service aspect of security. And when you've had people who've worked on the front line for years, especially males who've worked on the front line for years and years, it's not that they don't have the skill of customer service. It's just because of the nature of their work, maybe it's just something that's kind of lost in the background. I feel like women approach customer service with a different angle, which is probably why there's more in retail, because retail's more about customer service. Probably why more women work in retail. Not that a man can't provide customer service, it's just women may find it easier to do. So for us, it's really important, especially for our front of house work. We'd love to have more women on our team because we do feel like they have a different approach to customer service.
Yeah, I think that's the nail on the head. It's about having women who are qualified as officers who can bring with them that attribute where they have a sort of natural pull to want to help people and offer that customer service aspect that we pride ourselves on.
So going forward, how do you feel we should integrate more women into the front line?
I think it's something that needs to start from the top. So I know that you have been with this company for a long time, and I know that you've been the only woman for quite some time.
Yeah, so it was great to have you on board.
So within that time, you've recruited me, and you've also recruited someone in marketing. So females are represented more in the office. So I think what our challenge now is, how do we utilise our skills and attributes and feed that through our organisation?
So you're right, we definitely need to do that. I feel like I know there's a lot of women that probably work in traditional back office security roles, but are those women in those positions where they can influence decision, where they can influence what we do as a company going forward? And I can quite proudly say that I am lucky. I'm lucky enough to be able to say that, yeah, I do want more women and we're going to push for that. And I feel like you've totally come on board with that, because you feel exactly the same as I do. You can see all the benefits that more women would bring. And to be fair, it's not for want of trying. Whenever there's a woman who applies for a job within our company, we always call them to an interview. We snap that up straight away. And I'd love to have more on the front line if I possibly could.
I think more women on the front line would be fantastic. If you look at the police service, historically, that's been a male-dominated industry.
Yeah.
And now, as it stands, there's female officers everywhere you look. You always see women in the police force.
Yeah. And it comes back to safety. It definitely makes you feel safer as a woman, yeah, when you're approached by a female officer. And I know it's probably a misconception and it's not fair to say, but if you are a woman and you're out somewhere alone at night, if a female officer was to approach you, or you were to approach a female officer for help, you might just feel that little bit more comfortable doing that as opposed to approaching a male.
Yeah, that's it. And I think given the state of affairs with how women feel about safety, I think it's important now more than ever. And I think going forwards, it would be good to see more women attracted to the sector and to the industry.
I think for that we would need to work as a whole in the industry, though. I really do feel like we'll have to work with other companies, with other organisations, and maybe the SIA as well, you know, to kind of say, well, come on, let's talk about more women being on the front line. Let's do some more targeted campaigns for women to join the front line, especially since you're saying that we're having difficulty recruiting at all at the moment. Not just us, every industry, unfortunately, post-COVID is having issues recruiting good staff, quality staff, or any staff for that matter. So it's definitely a push forward, and maybe it might be the right time to start more campaigns for women in security and maybe show different roles. It's definitely the point of this podcast. It's definitely what we want going forward. So we're quite open to working with different organisations to kind of push that. If we feel important about it, maybe other people do too.
Yeah. Pot noodle time.
Right, so at Clearwatch, this is our tradition. It's our tradition to discuss important things over pot noodles. And we understand every organisation might have their own way of doing it, but it was good to talk. It was good to have this little chat and a bit of time out from our daily grind to talk about the things that matter, which we feel at the moment is women in the security sector. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully going forward, we see a change, and we see more women come into the industry and seeing the benefits of working in security.